From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. The light at the end of the pandemic tunnel, a little brighter tonight. Montana Governor Greg Gianforte announcing today that beginning April 1st, all Montanans over the age of 16 will be eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine. This will mark the state's biggest vaccine expansion yet. The governor says Montana's making better progress and it's working. MTN's Jonathan Anbarian has the latest from the Capitol.
Governor Greg Gianforte says they've achieved their main goal of getting COVID vaccines to the people most vulnerable to the virus. Now, with vaccine supplies continuing to increase, he says they're ready to start offering vaccines to anyone 16 and older starting April 1st.
With the movement to 1B+, we've now addressed the population where we've seen over 90% of the deaths and hospitalizations. And the next logical step was really to make it available to everyone so that we can go back to normal.
The state had previously projected it would be able to open vaccines to essential workers like teachers and first responders this spring, then to all adults by the summer. Gianforte says over the next 2 weeks, the state will be working with partners like local health departments and pharmacies on ways to get ready to start administering doses to this new, larger population. He said every person who gets the vaccine is helping get Montana back on track.
It will help us get back to a more normal life, and one where we get together with friends and families without worry, where we can shop and go to restaurants without worry, where we can go back to our places of worship without worry.
Earlier on Tuesday, Gianforte highlighted vaccines' roles in returning to normal. He toured Renaissance Senior Care in Helena, where he talked to residents, family members, and staff about what it's meant for them to get vaccinated. Sharon Myers says her 94-year-old mother was depressed by being isolated at the facility and unable to be with family members. Since they were both fully vaccinated, they've been able to spend time together again.
It was a big relief to me, to everybody. And to Mom, because I told her once she got her shot, then it would be better, you know.
Walgreens and CVS pharmacies have been conducting hundreds of vaccine clinics at long-term care facilities around Montana, administering doses to thousands of residents and staff. Leaders said Walgreens will finish its clinics on Wednesday.
A lot of emotional reactions throughout all these clinics, and to kind of see from the start to the end, it all kind of come through, and to see some of these reactions come to life, it's really cool to be a part of.
Gianforte, who's frequently promised to get the vaccine as soon as he's eligible for it, says he's looking forward to that time now being much sooner. In Helena, Jonathan Anbarian, MTN News.
Well, the governor says he expects Montana's vaccine allotment to remain about the same for the next 2 weeks, but increase the first week of April. So definitely good news for those of you who've been waiting for the vaccine, but also a reminder for everyone in groups 1A, B, and B+ to make an appointment as soon as you can so you're not competing for vaccine with the rest of the community. Riverstone Health tells us the Unified Health Command will be ready on April 1st. As long as the vaccine supply increases as expected. Health officials tell us most likely to meet that demand, the Unified Health Command would expand vaccine clinic hours at both Cedar Hall at Metro Park for first doses and at the Shrine Auditorium for second doses. We'll, of course, bring you those updates as we learn more. In the meantime, if you do fall into groups 1A, B, and B+, that includes everyone 60 and older, as well as people 16 to 69 with a high-risk medical condition. You can go to mtreadyclinic.org to make an appointment for your first dose. At last check, there were a few appointments available for tomorrow in Yellowstone County, more than 100 appointments on Thursday and more than 125 on Friday. And if you fall into those groups or you're a teacher or daycare provider, you can go to vaccinefinder.org to make an appointment. Well, the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services says data shows that COVID-19 ranked as the third leading cause of death in Montana last year. COVID-19 related infections killed 1,104 Montanans last year, about 9% of the total deaths. Only heart disease and cancer took more Montana lives. The state numbers show almost 75% of the COVID-19 related deaths were residents 70 and older. Native Americans represented 18% of COVID-19 deaths, while making up only about 7% of the population. Overall, Montana reported a 14% increase in total deaths last year. Another sobering statistic, health experts say deaths due to chronic liver disease, homicide, and alcohol were significantly higher than previous years. According to provisional data, 2020 marked the first time on record that the number of deaths exceeded the number of births in Montana. Those records date back more than 100 years to 1908. New information tonight about an officer-involved shooting that happened on the Crow Reservation over the weekend. The FBI is looking for 36-year-old Darnell Lee Not Afraid in connection with that shooting. A BIA officer suffered minor injuries in the incident. Not Afraid's condition is unknown. Now, Not Afraid is a member of the Crow tribe. He's described as being 5'6", 160 pounds, with brown eyes and black hair. He has tattoos on his chest, finger, left hand, and right arm. Anyone with information is asked to call the Salt Lake City FBI number at 801-579-1400 or the Crow Agency BIA Police Dispatch. That number is 406-638-2631. The murder trial of a 24-year-old Laurel man continued today in downtown Billings. Q2's Shaquille Cozart was in the courtroom to bring us the latest.
Day 2 of the Diego Hernandez trial was underway this morning. Prosecutors presented the jury with the clothes Hernandez was wearing when he was last seen with Lori Bray.
Deputy Christopher Etter of the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office reported that he and another officer arrived at Hernandez's home a little less than 24 hours after he was seen with Bray. Etter reported that he found the hoodie, pants, and shoes that Hernandez was wearing on surveillance footage outside of Cedar Ridge Casino, where he was offered a ride home from Bray. The light-colored pants were shown in the courtroom and had what Etter described as bleach stains in several areas.
This to me almost looks like they've been bleached. The discoloration that was present when I took photographs, obviously still there. Some of the markings down below here, you also see some of the stains that were on the back. And then the back side, again, the same discoloration. Appear to be washed or bleached, possibly.
Defense attorneys say that Hernandez was washing his clothes as part of his normal routine. Along with the clothes, the jury was presented with pictures of scratches that Hernandez had on his face and body, and pictures of his room that were taken on October 1st.
Reporting in Billings, I'm Shaquille Cozart with MTN News.
Thanks, Shaquille. That trial will continue tomorrow. Montana Senator Steve Daines will make a run for the southern border next week, where the immigration crisis is getting worse. Daines calls Montana a northern border state with a southern border problem. He'll join Texas Senator Ted Cruz and other local stakeholders there to tour the Rio Grande Valley. Republicans are blaming the Biden administration for the crisis. There's been a 30% increase in unaccompanied migrant children over the last week alone. Congressman Matt Rosendale made a trip to the border earlier this year and says the encouragement of illegal immigration by Democratic rhetoric is to blame. Democratic Senator John Tester has also seen the crisis firsthand. A spokesperson for Tester says the senator has been in close contact with the Department of Homeland Security Secretary about strengthening the southern border, and that Tester will continue to work to pass comprehensive immigration reform to fix the system. Well, the humanitarian crisis at the southern border growing larger and more dire by the day. Sources tell CBS News more than 13,000 migrant children who entered the country without their parents are now in U.S. custody. Here's more from CBS.
Desperation and frustration growing as groups flow into the U.S. Deputy Ruben Salinas handles his regular duties during the day and patrols the banks of the Rio Grande River at night.
We average about 300.
An historic number of migrants crossing into the U.S. illegally, creating an overwhelming need for more help in the Rio Grande Valley.
Children that are unaccompanied, they usually range from 7 to 13. And the smallest one is about 7, and he was by himself.
¿Qué es su nombre? The first group we find during our embed with Deputy Salinas and Sergeant Roger Rich is small. Yoseli is from Honduras and traveling with her 5-year-old son, Derek, who quickly tells me he hid his money in his shoes beneath 2 pairs of socks to keep it from getting wet. The two hope to live with family in Florida while the request for asylum is processed.
Along this river here, there's pretty steep banks.
Constables don't have the authority to detain anyone. Instead, they direct them down the road to this Border Patrol staging area. Some migrants are processed here outside under a bridge and given foil blankets while they wait. This group of unaccompanied teenage boys tells us they just crossed the river and there's more people coming. More than 24 are in this group. It's dark, they're wet, and there are a lot of young children clinging to their parents. But there are also several kids by themselves.
Bolivia, he's by himself.
Towards the back of the group is a 10-year-old boy traveling alone.
¿Y tiene familia aquí en Estados Unidos? Tía. Ana.
Walmil Esteban Rosales from Honduras, searching for a glimmer of hope in the darkness.
A lot of those unaccompanied minors will end up at facilities like this one. They will get processed here or underneath the bridge that you just saw in our story. From there, they will end up in shelters like the one that is opening up at the Dallas Convention Center. And then another federal agency will take over and look for a family member or guardian to watch over them while they are in the U.S., waiting through the asylum process. Mireya Villarreal, CBS News, Donna, Texas.
President Biden says he has no plans to visit the border right now, and DHS Secretary Mayorkas added, while the situation is difficult, his department is tackling it, he says. All right, time to take a quick look at weather with Chief Meteorologist Ed McIntosh. The snow has eased up days ago, but Wyoming is still far from digging out, Ed.
That's right. It's all across the state. We're seeing some concerns. Northern portion of the state wasn't as impacted by the big storm from the weekend, but we added extra snow even today from the Bighorn Mountains all the way over extending towards South Dakota. This midsection of the state is actually a little bit better at this point. They're starting to dig out around Casper and KC, but once you get from around Wheatland to the south, we still have a lot of roads that are closed all the way into the northern portion of Wyoming, and that includes a big chunk of Interstate 80 and portions of I-25 as well. Here's some of the road pictures today posted by the Wyoming Department of Transportation. You can see up to 5-foot drifts in portions of the roadways. They're continuing to dig out. Closer look at the forecast coming up.
Thanks, Ed. The Billings City Council looking to sustain funding for operation and maintenance of city parks. Last year, $1 million of the park's budget was on the chopping block to help the city fill a $3.5 million budget deficit. Instead, the council floated a levy to fund public safety, leaving the park's budget alone. Q2's Mitch Legge joins us now with some of the sustainable options the council's considering.
At the Billings City Council Monday night, members heard 3 presentations looking to further robustly fund Billings parks. Some of the options on the table include bonds and levies that would have to be approved by voters. The city of Billings currently has 2,600 acres of park and trail land, with about half of that land developed. Parks and Public Lands Director Michael Whitaker told the council that many of the city's parks don't meet national maintenance standards. As well, Whitaker said the department has added 43 acres of developed parkland and numerous restrooms and playgrounds to other parks without receiving additional funding or staffing to take care of them. Representatives from the Parks Board and Parks Department presented options to fund parks in the future that include combinations of levies, bonds, and special districts. The council didn't make any final decisions on how to fund Billings parks in the future, but it seemed the body had an appetite to pay for a survey to see if the voters would approve a major bond or levy for the parks. At the council meeting, some members were concerned about floating a large ask before voters to fund the parks after promising too much for public safety. In Billings, Mitch Legge, MTN News.
Thank you, Mitch. There's also plans in the works to develop a yearly matching grant to give the public more opportunity to fund specific park projects. The initial plan is for the city to match $250,000 donated by a private organization. Well, Yellowstone National Park says the first grizzly bear sighting of the year has happened already, this time from the air. It happened on March 13th. A pilot supporting park wildlife studies saw the grizzly interacting with wolves at a carcass in the northern part of the park. This is the first sighting of a grizzly bear in the park this year, although tracks have been seen on several occasions in the last couple of weeks. The first bear sighting of 2020 occurred on March 7th. Still to come on the MTN 10 o'clock news here on Q2, we'll spring forward and learn how daylight saving time can play tricks on your body. That story coming up next. And in sports, the perfect season. Coming up, we'll learn how the Big Timber girls turned their title dreams into reality.
From Montana's news leader, you're watching the MTN 10 o'clock.